going on, guys? I'm Ben Bateman.
And I'm Andrew Guy.
And we are the Action Guys.
The Action Guys. What is that?
Because we're doing a
Because
comedy.
of comedy.
I am embarrassed.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. Good voice.
Thank you.
Wow.
I'm trying to make up for what just happened.
Now that we're on video, it's important we do things that make us look extra stupid.
Hey, we're back on video. That's exciting.
It's exciting. It's 40 seconds. Is Cody still here? Nope.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. You
Damn
thought you
it.
had me there.
I was going to say, I hope he's not, because I feel like this is one of our worst opens.
It's a bad intro. I heard people making fun of our intro when we walked in today. I heard Roka doing it. to
Oh,
other
really?
people. It's a common thing now.
That's exciting. Well, John lives here.
Yeah.
So.
There's a couple things they all do. They all like to ride the Collider scooter, and they make fun of the Action Guys intro.
Yep.
So
And they
that's-
also all make the mic smell terrible. That's not us. We're not here enough to do
and
that.
they hold company mixers during our show.
They do. Like, we actually have the holiday party. If we can get you guys actually just right in there. It might be a
Lock
little
you
loud,
guys
but
in
it'll
the
be fine.
studio. Yeah, anyway, guys, we're back here on the Action Guys talking about a non-action subject. Today's topic is going to be the top 10 greatest comedies of the 90s. Now, there's so much that goes into this episode. There's a lot of background, a lot of things I want to explain. And before I get to all of it, there's some controversial choices on
Oh,
here.
yeah. There's going to be backlash.
Yeah, if you guys are watching, if you're listening, if you're watching, this may be the first time. We're on Collider's podcast network. That's where you can listen to this. That's where you can watch the video.
Yep.
So like, subscribe, comment, leave your thoughts, because I guarantee your top 10 will be different than our top 10.
Oh, 100%. We, there's a lot of things that went into this list. It's the funniness, it's the greatness and the importance of the movie, and it's also a movie had to be good enough for both of us to want it on the list. So just because there's movies in the honorable mentions that you guys might be like, well, what the hell? Maybe I didn't like it and Ben did, or maybe vice versa. But since this is a collaborative list, these are our 10 favorite comedies of the 90s. And the whole reason that we did this topic today, on the Action Guys talking about comedies, because we have something called patreon.com/teamaction where we have, it's a great place to kind of follow along with everything that we do outside of the studios that we work for.
Interacting with us on a personal level. We have a lot of conversations we get to have with all you guys. If you're fans, you can ask us questions. And the higher levels of the Patreon, we do these cool, these Google Hangouts. They're called Generals Bunkers. We do them before every show. We just finished one with the Generals. Just for 10 minutes, we hang out, just kind of shoot the shit. And they threw in their choices for top 10 comedies.
And luckily, all their choices are on our top 10 list.
So that relationship to the Patreon and all the patrons of Team Action's Patreon, which is patreon.com/Team Action, we do this debate show on Sundays now. It's called the Action Face-Off. Commanding the Army. Do you want to command the Action Army? And what we do is 4 patrons get to debate movie-style fights against one of us, where the other one is going to judge. There's 3 rounds of debate. There's some trivia that goes into it. There's a head-to-head final. It all streams live on the Action Industries YouTube. And we just did top 10, or we just did the greatest comedy of the 90s. Drew fought last night. He was arguing for Dumb and Dumber.
I won last night. I battled out for Dumb and Dumber, and I was very, very. It's one of my absolute favorites of all time. But there was a lot of really other good movies in there. You had Wayne's World. You had Death Becomes Her. You had Toy Story 2. You had The Big Lebowski. And honestly, what's so great about it is that you get a little bit of trivia, you get a lot of debate, you get some good personalities, some good trash talk,
smack talk. Yeah, it was great.
It's just a blast. So
it's my favorite thing we've done in a while. We've done
really
2 of them now.
Yeah.
I got to fight in the first one. You did the second one, and it's really the coolest part about it is that obviously the captains, the generals, the 5-star generals in the Action Army, they're the ones we interact with the most. But because we include a patron at any level below those, we've gotten to meet now some new patrons who we didn't really know as well before. We didn't get to hang out with, and spending an hour debating against or judging and cracking jokes with is a really, really fun way to get to know the community that has been so supportive of us as we build the Action Industries brand.
Yeah, it's been really, really cool to get to know some of those guys at the levels that we don't get to interact with as much, like Wiley Todd and Luke Sweezy. So that being said, comedy is what we talked about yesterday. Comedies is going to be what we're talking about today. And I already prefaced it a little bit of how we're doing this. It's funniest, it's greatest, it's most important, it's also collaborative. And we got a big list of honorable mentions, but I'm almost wondering if we don't do the honorable mentions because there's so many spoilers in there.
Yeah, I think what we do is this is what I think we should do.
Okay.
So I think we'll do 10 through 4. And then when we get to 3, I think we start throwing out the honorable mentions because people are going to be waiting for them in the top 3. And then that way
But do we say the big ones in that honorable mention run?
I don't know.
I don't think we do. I think we leave them out. I think what we do is we talk about some of these honorable mentions, like, for instance, Billy Madison. Billy Madison was one of my favorite comedies growing up. Me and my sister, that was our movie.
Gold
Now,
standard.
when she moved out, she left Clueless behind.
Yeah.
But when I lived with her and when we hung out, when I was a kid, we would watch Billy Madison, and her best friend would quote that movie from beginning to end. So I thought I was so cool if I could be able to hang out with them.
Yeah.
But Billy Madison didn't mean quite as much to you growing up. You liked The Wedding Singer a lot more than I did.
I really did.
I love The Wedding Singer now as an adult, but it doesn't have the same nostalgia and the same feeling. And I also didn't laugh my ass off the same way I did in Billy Madison when watching The Wedding Singer.
Totally, I hear that. So yeah, I think there's maybe a list of about 5 that are kind of like the big ones.
Yeah.
That we'll reveal those before the top 3, or maybe we'll reveal some of the others. But I think we want to keep most of the honorable mentions here in the dark, so you guys don't know what to expect.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there.
But yes, if you guys want to follow along with the conversation, if you want to share yours, leave your thoughts below in the comments. And of course, if you want to follow what Drew and I are doing, if you want to tweet at us or have a more personal response, find us on Twitter. You can find me at Ben Bateman Media.
You guys can find me at Andrew Guy. You can find the show at Team Action Show, and we read the comments. So leave comments below and tweet at us.
Yeah, so I think we just jump right in with that. So our number 10 here is a movie that I know we both like a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that I don't think most people would have on their top 10 90s comedies. Then again, I've certainly met people that laugh at this movie like they think it's absolutely a top 10 comedy.
And every single time that you talk to someone about this movie that's seen it, they're like, oh my God. They're so excited that you've seen it, and then you just start quoting stuff back and forth. It's amazing.
Yeah, and the movie we're talking about is Kingpin.
Yep.
That's the Farrelly Brothers comedy. I believe it's 1998, I want to say. It stars Randy Quaid. It's Woody Harrelson, one of the classic roles.
Yeah.
And, of course, Big Earn himself, Bill Murray.
Bill Murray. I hated Bill Murray in this movie when I was a kid. He was the worst, dude.
There's elements to that are stolen from The Hustler in this movie. Obviously, that's kind of the relationship.
Yeah.
They're running games. Then, of course, Woody loses his hand.
That scared me as a kid.
Yeah,
like the idea of someone putting my hand. Because honestly, I think what would happen is nothing would really happen.
Yeah, I don't know what's even in there.
Yeah, it's not like a blender. It literally feeds balls back to you. So I feel anyway. That scared me as a kid.
Yeah, that scared the crap out of you. Yeah, it's classic Farrelly Brothers. So about like a year or two ago now, probably 2 years ago, I remember talking to Peter Farrelly. Peter Farrelly or Bobby Farrelly? It was Peter, I think. And telling him that this is one of my favorite comedies. I absolutely adore a lot of your movies, especially Kingpin. And he was like, "Oh, you're one of the people, huh?" Like, I guess the movie just didn't make any money.
People don't like that movie. I mean, a lot of people didn't see it. That was the other thing about some of the honorable mentions here is like, I guarantee you the biggest honorable mentions have been seen by 90% of the general public, whereas Kingpin's probably been seen by like 38%.
It's for like a year. It's been streaming on one of the services. I can't remember which one.
They just never take it down.
Yeah, it's on one of them, and that's when I rewatched it again. I've told you this before, but I'm really bad at putting movies on in the background. Comedies is a little better at it, but if I put a movie on in the background that I've seen before, I usually find myself just being bad at the thing I'm doing and then getting sucked into the movie and just watching the movie. And Kingpin makes me laugh so hard. Like that scene. I mean, The Landlord.
The Landlord is amazing.
It's incredible.
And like the nightmare flashbacks to The Landlord. I can't decide whether I like how pathetic Woody looks more or Big Earn's hair. When the hair at the end is like all over, it's like a it's like a ribbon. It's amazing.
He's like, Mr. McCracken, what do you have sugar in your back seat for? And he's like, didn't I tell you to call me Big Earn? He's like, it's incredible. And Woody, this is also like such a wonderful moment of Woody's career because he wasn't the Woody Harrelson of today.
No.
He was Woody Harrelson coming off of White Men Can't Jump and Money Train and a lot of the 90s movies that he had, he was in a lot of stuff in the 90s, but he really got famous in the later 2000s in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just love him in this movie.
I really do. And honestly, like his weird relationship with the girl, everything that Randy Quaid did in the 90s is like, Randy Quaid is amazing.
He's amazing.
Whether he's in Men in Black, not Men in Black, excuse me, Independence Day, this movie, or in Christmas Vacation, that dude is so goddamn hilarious.
Hilarious, yeah. Oh, I mean, I love when he goes out, when Woody goes out to milk the cow, and he's drinking the milk.
It's a bowl.
It's incredible.
So that is our number 10. Coming in at number 9 here. This is actually an interesting one because I grew up in a pretty religious family, but my 3 sisters love this R-rated comedy.
Yeah.
All of them.
This is rated R, huh?
I believe so. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to look this one up to make sure we're right about that because I also can't remember who directed this movie offhand. Yeah, okay. It's not a name that I recognize.
No, it's definitely rated R, right?
Film directed by David Merkin.
I know that name.
Yeah, I didn't know the name David Merkin.
Yeah, rated R, definitely.
It's rated R. And
I promise you, we've seen this movie, guys. It's Romy and Michele's high school reunion.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting about this movie was, like, when I saw this movie, I only knew Lisa Kudrow as Phoebe.
Yeah.
She might as well have just been named Phoebe at the point when I saw this movie.
I feel like I was the same way. So this movie came out, 1997? Did I just see that? This movie came out in 1997, and Friends at that point had been on the air for a few years. This is right in the early premiere run, and I'm just having a hard time right now.
I believe in you.
The other actress in the film, Mira Sorvino, she had won an Oscar for being in Mighty Aphrodite like a year or two earlier, and so this movie was like a pretty hot release. And it's one of those great like coming of age, go back to high school type of movies.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that's so wonderful and so funny about this movie is that there wasn't a whole lot of 90s comedies centered around women. And women getting to be kind of R-rated in a way, right? In the way that Bridesmaids happens later, or Alex McFarlane last night on Commanding the Army argued for Death Becomes Her.
Yeah.
You didn't have as many laugh-out-loud R-rated comedies or even PG-13 comedies where they were telling the women, play to the male audience, make the same stupid poop jokes and R-rated jokes, and they do in this movie, and it's fantastic.
And they also elevate the comedy too, and it is totally geared towards this female audience. Again, it's like why my sisters loved watching this movie, and it was also to see Lisa Kudrow be rated R.
Yeah.
For me, was like I just laughed at that in general. I think really why this movie was so important was just because of what you talk about. It was one of those Death Becomes Her, Romy and Michele, Clueless. Yeah. There were these really, really important comedies that were fucking hilarious with female-led casts that just kind of got, I don't want to say swept under the rug, but they just never got like the amount of love that they really should have gotten.
And their super negative friend is Janine Garofalo, right?
Yep.
So what I remember about this movie, I have a couple memories from this movie. One of the ones that I remember is when Lisa Kudrow, I think it's Lisa Kudrow, it's possible it's Sorvino, but one of them goes to borrow the car they end up driving. And there's like the mechanic. And she's like, can I borrow your car? He's like, no. And she's like, what do you want? He's like, you know what I want. And she's like, I'm not gonna have sex with you to borrow your car. I just remember as a kid, like
the idea of that was I mean there's the we're gonna enjoy ourselves moment. There's just so many great things, and also now that we're as old as we are and we've been to our high school reunions, that's what makes this so much better. I think that's really why it made our top 10 was because I mean we're 31 now.
Alan Cumming with the big binder to cover his erection, and then them doing the synchronized dance to Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time at the. That's the shit. Like, there's stuff in this movie that I've seen this movie probably 3 times.
It's genius.
But I've remembered, like, my whole life. It's just had, like, very, very memorable scenes that stuck out. And they're just great. They're really, really funny. It's like, similar humor to Night at the Roxbury, except they're, like, the women version of those characters.
Yeah.
Except it's a lot more heartfelt and a lot less slapstick.
Yeah, a little more intelligent, for sure. And so if we're talking about high school, we can go to the other side of that with number 8, which is American Pie.
Now, this movie... This is a movie, so of every single movie on this list, I would say there are 2. There are 2 on here that I distinctly remember seeing in theaters and remember like being of an age where I was like aware of what was happening. And American Pie, I think, came out in 98 or 99, so we're like around 10 years old. You're seeing these high school kids, and the premise of the movie is that they're all basically on prom night trying to sleep with their high school girlfriend.
They don't want to be virgins when they go to college.
It's like one of the premier R-rated comedies of the time, and we've talked about this before. The R-rated comedy tends to age badly, and some parts of this movie.
Yeah, there's definitely some parts of this that have aged badly, but like there's also parts of this that are just like the way the movie opens is with him trying to jerk off to cable porn through the snowstorm that we used to call it as kids. I don't know any man between the age of 25 or maybe 28 and 45.
They can't relate.
Who did not do the same thing. At least try to watch porn on TV back when you were a kid when you couldn't see anything. It was just static and fuzz.
Is that a boob?
You hear like, oh. And then it's like, oh, what is that? And then they say something like, fuck me, whatever it is. And then the mom loses it. She's like trying to turn it off. And he's got the sock on. And then the dad grabs the pill. Like the whole thing. And just watching Jason Biggs be uncomfortable,
it's really good.
That was one of the things that was like his thing.
He's fantastic. Also, Eugene Levy. Obviously, this is the movie. I think that this is probably the most commercial success he ever had. Was this movie? He had a whole career after this.
Well, he had a whole career after this, but then also all those movies that he'd done before.
Yeah.
everyone went back and watched.
Right, because he's in all the Christopher Guest movies.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they're really funny.
Stifler's mom.
Yeah.
Well, that one time at band camp, like you talk about all these quotes.
Sean William Scott, just the character of Stifler.
Just Stifler in general.
I mean, Chris Klein. Let's not forget about Chris
Let's not
Klein.
forget about
here.
boy Chris Klein.
I love me some Chris Klein. Our buddy, whose name I'm blanking on right now, who's in Schmodown, Rookie of the Year.
Sam? Oh.
What? I'm having a
Is it
literal.
Brendan Meyer? No, who are you talking about? Rookie of the Year.
He's the star of Rookie of the Year. He's the one who dates Tara Reid.
Oh God, I thought you were saying Rookie of the Year this year.
No.
You're talking about Thomas Ian Nichols.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's
Or
awesome.
Nicholas.
He's a great guy. He's super friendly, and he's great in this movie. And the whole movie,
He's the sweet one.
yeah, he is really nice. But this movie is fantastic. I remember, like, I have this memory of this movie, probably like 2 years after it came out, or even maybe a year. And I remember, like, my parents split up. I was living with my dad, and he had like a men's group. He'd, like his 55-year-old group of men would get together on Thursdays to like talk about that. My dad's a psychotherapist. Like, this is their thing.
It's our men time.
I remember like being in my room and hearing him, and somebody's like, "Have you guys seen this movie, American Pie?" I'm like, what? It's like a group of high school boys, and he explains the premise. Like, oh, interesting. And they're all like kind of laughing and like talking about it, being like, oh, what a quaint comedy. And I was like, wow, this is where this movie has reached to.
Right.
There's like a men's group of like 55-year-old
They're like,
dudes
"Oh,
explaining
American
the comedy.
Pie."
I was like, this movie is that relevant. And obviously we can't forget about Shannon Elizabeth. I mean, Shannon Elizabeth feels like she was the thing that was the thing that came out of this movie. Shannon Elizabeth got famous from American Pie. That's where her career came from.
Just from her being naked in the beginning,
She's
like
naughty,
being the hottest girl that
and she's
anyone had
funny,
ever seen in a movie.
and she does a good job.
And she's so sweet and
she's
lovable.
got the accent.
Yeah, it was funny. It was like her and Tyra Banks after this movie were just like everyone was in love with them.
Tara Reid, you mean?
I mean, yeah, did I say Tyra Banks? Yeah, Tara Reid.
It's about the culmination. Yeah.
I actually haven't watched this movie in a while, so I don't know how poorly it's aged. But it's one of those movies that it's kind of like Wedding Crashers we talked about. At the age we were at when we saw this movie when it came out,
It's the funniest thing in the world.
it's the funniest thing in the world, and nostalgia makes up for for things aging poorly.
I mean,
with
there's
us.
all the moments, right? Like what one of them says in the car is he's like, they call me Nova. Casanova.
And she just starts laughing at him.
That one, and then suck me beautiful.
Did you just say "suck me beautiful"?
It's like, yes. It's so dumb, but it's so funny.
It's so stupid.
And he had sex with the pie, which is just
that is something that happened.
Yeah.
And then the conversation with the dad afterwards. So
it's really good.
At number 7, this is another one of those movies that probably growing up we wouldn't have thought it would ever make this list, but now in hindsight and with the amount of love it has.
This movie's funnier now. I mean, granted, I didn't watch it back then. I just saw it this year for the first time. But the movie is Galaxy Quest.
Yep.
There's a Screen Junkies documentary coming about the making of this movie this year. It is really a high point in a lot of these people's careers at this point. I mean, it's Apex Mountain, as Bill Simmons likes to say on the Rewatchables. Feels like Tim Allen, this is the peak of his career because it's this and Toy Story 2 coming out at the same time.
He was probably on Home Improvement still.
Yeah. This is probably the most famous he got. It's Sigourney in a totally character role, right? You obviously have all these supporting characters. You have a really young Justin Long. You have Sam Rockwell. You have Alan Rickman in one of the funniest things he ever did.
I grab Thaw's hammer.
Tony Shalhoub.
Yes. Sam Rockwell is absolutely incredible in this movie.
Yeah.
I actually think, though, my favorite thing about this is just the disdain from Alan Rickman throughout. He just hates everything. Like, when they ask him, like, when people they keep coming up, he's like, oh, I grab Thor's hammer. He's just like, he, like, snatches it, signs it, and gives it away. It's so good. And then, like, just Tim Allen is just the biggest piece of shit.
He is. He's great. And he's a great drunk. And he's just great. I mean, this movie, I gave this movie a pretty high score when I reviewed it on my 100 Movies I Missed list because it just felt like this was it's PG or PG-13. It's got to be.
Yeah.
And this feels like a perfect PG-13 comedy. You don't need to rely on it being R at all.
No.
It's just funny. And I think that's one of the reasons this movie's has been so endearing to so many people for so long is I think a lot of people watched it when they were like 10. And they remember it really fondly.
And this is also when Star Trek was massive.
Yeah.
This came out when Star Trek was huge. The Next Generation, I think, was still on. And, like, this was a perfect parody of that. I always die with the transportation or the teleporting thing. And then it just blows up in the room.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's really good. So coming up, we're getting into the last movie on the back half of our top 5 here. This is one I'm just the biggest fan of.
Yeah.
Number 6 here. You got Office Space. Office Space probably the only comedy on our top 10, I would say, that is firmly in the like highbrow adult comedy a little bit more so. So a lot of these are kind of bro comedies, right? But like Office Space always felt like it was a little smarter than the others. Mike Judge was always kind of like satirical. He was always kind of poking fun at people.
It's like a true workplace comedy. Lumbergh is amazing.
I mean, Gary Cole, right? Just
Gary Cole is just fantastic.
Best hair in the business.
I think the problem with Office Space still to this day is just the third act falling apart a little bit. It's just not as funny as the first, like the first 2/3 of it. If so, I think it's top 3. Yeah, really.
On rewatch this movie a few years ago, I rewatched it and I was blown away by how funny I still thought it was.
It's so funny.
I mean, you obviously.
Hey, Peter, Channel 9.
I mean, the jump to conclusions, Matt.
I deal with the goddamn customers. Got conclusions that you jump to.
Samir, not gonna work here anymore. I mean, the Bobs.
The Bobs.
John C. McGinley, just an absolute legend.
I celebrate the guy's entire catalog.
Yeah, I mean, Livingston. This is the Ron Livingston movie, right? Is there? I mean, other than Swingers, which is like the other thing he's in that I can think of early.
I loved Ron Livingston after this movie, and then I just realized there was nothing else to watch him in.
I think that's the case with a lot of people. I mean, when I remember talking to him last year, a couple years ago on a red carpet, and talking about like you were like the face of one of the premier comedies of the 90s, like is one of like the comedies.
Yeah.
Like, you're like the face of it. Like that's like a crazy impact to have on the world when you think about what people. We have this conversation. This movie is almost on everybody's top 10.
Yeah,
it's hard to look at like a list of 50 and not just want to pull.
What did he say?
He was like flattered, obviously.
Yeah.
I think I called him the face of this and Swingers, which is obviously not true. And he's like, I'm so flattered you call me the face of Swingers. He's kind of like, you're full of shit. Kid.
Yeah, yeah. You know how to make me feel good. Yeah, I loved this movie. It was one of the first R-rated movies that I could just watch all the time, like at home. My mom, for some reason, let me do it. I think it's because she thought it was so funny. But
what's the scene for you? What's
the scene?
Yeah.
Oh man, you know it's not really that funny, but it's the badass. Damn, it feels good to be a gangster scene when he comes in, takes like the drill, the handle, the wall coming off of the cubicle. That scene for me was so awesome. And then I think it's the losing his shit in the interview. I'm good with people. What the hell is wrong with you people? And then he comes out. He's like, how'd it go? He's like puts his head down and walks away.
Any relation to the pop singer? I mean, there's just
he's so excited.
Comic timing in this movie is unreal. I think for me, the scene has got to be the.
What does he say? You can just call me Mike.
Just call me Mike.
And then they're like, oh.
For me, it's the hypnotist.
Deeper and deeper.
Yeah, deeper and deeper. he's sweating and he's like moving his hand. I don't know why I've always thought it was so funny, but I've always thought that scene was so funny.
Deeper and deeper.
Yeah, and then of course, I mean it's Aniston. That's another just like funny.
Yeah, she's great in that.
Yeah, she's great. I mean,
pieces of flair.
Yeah,
37 pieces of flair.
Yeah,
if you want to wear 37 pieces of flair, just make the goddamn minimum of 37 pieces.
Looks like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
No, man, I believe you get your ass kicked for saying something like that.
Yeah, Dietrich Bader, just incredible. I mean, who doesn't love Office Space? So, all right, that's going to round out the back of our top 5.
Yep.
So, our bottom 5.
Yeah, I wonder how we're doing so far on your guys' list. Let us know, of course, down below. Go ahead.
Getting into the top 5. Number 5. This is the other movie on the list that I can remember seeing in theaters distinctly, and this is Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery.
Yeah, so what I thought you were actually going to say before was that there's like 2 movies that came and they were like a movement. It actually would probably be 3. It'd be Austin Powers, Office Space, and American Pie.
Yeah.
But Austin Powers was a true moment in history. Like
moment in time. It
really was.
Like I'm trying to think of what are the comedies that have come out, say, in the last decade that you could put on the level of like that kind of funny. Like Superbad
on Austin Powers level?
Superbad was really funny. People loved Superbad, but it didn't spawn like multiple sequels, and like everyone was doing
the only thing that's been like that is Hangover, I think, recently. Like I can't think of another comedy that has spawned a trilogy other than The Hangover. Bridesmaids didn't do it.
Is it because Austin Powers was not R-rated, but it still managed, like all those movies you talked about, they're all R-rated?
Definitely, because you could make so much money with these movies. And Mike Myers, you knew him from SNL. Your kids love him because he's so funny and weird. Like Mike
Wayne's
Myers
World
was
already succeeded.
he was just there was no way this could go wrong.
Right, he was
you know?
he was just like legendary. He was Jim Carrey levels funny.
Yep.
But he had the pedigree already of one franchise, one movie already launching and working, and he was so good with character work. And this character was so funny. Like,
yeah, and also because how big was Bond when we were growing up?
yeah, right.
Like,
I mean, this is 2 years.
Bond.
This is 2 years after Goldeneye, and it's the same year as Tomorrow Never Dies. I'm pretty sure.
It was just perfect.
Yeah.
It was exactly, and it was like it wasn't showing American audiences British humor.
No.
It was just showing American audiences American humor with a British accent.
His clothes and all
His teeth.
Yeah, sex. Yes, please. Like
Elizabeth Hurley is amazing.
She's incredible. Yeah.
I mean, and like even when you go back, and I actually turned this on like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Just like in the background.
Really funny.
I was laughing my ass. I was shocked. I was laughing my ass off.
Tom Arnold, fantastic. In the number 2.
Hang on here, give him hell. Yeah. You show that turd who's boss.
Who does number 2 work for? I mean, Will Ferrell is Mustafa. Right? Like,
I'm very badly burnt.
There was just so many things about this movie that worked. And then, of course, because it's like not only was Austin so quotable and funny, but Dr. Evil.
Dr. Evil was more quotable.
Was more quotable and funnier, and like such a good character. And I think we've talked about this before, but it's the Dana Carvey interview when he's being asked about that basically Dr. Evil is Lorne Michaels,
right?
And that was Dana's thing, and Meyer stole it and put it in the
isn't
movie.
there like bad blood you said about that, or not, or a little bit?
Yeah, Howard Stern asked him about it. It's a really interesting interview. You can see he's kind of like uncomfortably.
He's kind of surprised. Yeah,
he's kind of uncomfortably acknowledging to himself that it is. He's like, I don't know if it ever got resolved, but it's an interesting video to look up on YouTube, guys. If you ever want to like,
because wouldn't you say that Mike Myers was and is exponentially more famous than Dana Carvey ever was?
10-1.
10-1.
I mean, Dana Carvey during the time of Wayne's World was really famous also.
And like Church Lady.
But like 10 years later, when you're talking about the stuff that has lived
I don't know why I had the disconnect of him being Garth.
Yeah.
So it feels like even more of a fuck you.
Right.
Like we did this together and you stole this from me and you went to here and you left me back here.
And like Dana was an equally incredible comic genius.
100%.
Like you can see it in all the old work. Like
inherently, I actually think Dana Carvey is funnier than Mike Myers.
Yeah. Like a lot of those old sketches, the stuff he would anchor, the chopping broccoli on the piano sketch. I mean, Dana Carvey did a lot of great stuff, but like there was something about Austin Powers. It was you call it a movement. I think it's correct because you look at the movies on here. First of all, how many of the movies on here have a sequel? Second of all, how many movies on here that have a sequel are not rated R?
How many people in America would know what Shag Me meant if it weren't for Austin Powers?
100%.
You know,
words like Randy, like I mean, stuff
yeah,
that he
like
says
all
in the
that's
movie.
and then like of course like all of his catchphrases and like yeah baby, like everyone said yeah baby. People dressed up as Mike Myers or Austin Powers for a decade
for Halloween. Yeah, they still do. I mean,
they still do.
Yeah,
and it's still that funny, which I think is really important. Getting into the top 5 here, I mean, every single one of these movies on the list, we both think are still very, very funny. I think that's something that's really, really important because movies do not age so well. Again, like Ace Ventura, I loved as a kid. I don't think it's as funny as an adult, whereas these top 5, I really do. So
I think that's the one thing as we get into these top 4 we're going to get to that to really acknowledge is it's not a question of a great movie that is also funny. It's greatest comedies.
Yeah.
And some of the movies that are going to make the honorable mentions that we're going to acknowledge here towards the end, they feel like they were maybe funnier at one time, or they don't feel like they're relevant in the same way.
Or they don't feel like just a straight-up comedy. They feel like they could be like, I mean, for instance, I'll say one right now since we're getting close. Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
I love that movie. Robin Williams is actually hilarious. And there is really, really good, great adult comedy in this movie. But it still is like a family movie. It's a feel-good, feels movie.
Right. I mean, last night on the stream, Jerry Morris was arguing for Toy Story 2.
Right.
Great comedy, great movie. Not really a comedy, though, so much as it is, So it's like that's the thing. Again, Alex Mack on the same episode arguing for Death Becomes Her. Really funny movie. Not as naturally funny as some of the others, and
also great impact. You got to remember these words as well. And Death Becomes Her was not a hugely impactful movie.
Yeah,
not the three of their careers didn't just turn to comedy after that.
Yeah, right. It's like it could have been at the time, but it's like I think the way things live on has to define a lot of what this is about, which is why Austin Powers gets to be so high on the list. Now, the number 4 movie, strangely enough, hasn't lived on quite in the same way, but I think on a pound-for-pound basis...
Oh, you Google it, you talk to anyone about the 90s comedies, this will always be in the top 5.
And
always.
And it's drop-dead hilarious, and that is there's something about Mary.
It's so good.
I got to talk about this movie a little bit on the top 5 R-rated comedies episode that you weren't here for, Riley and I did. And this was on my top 5 R-rated comedies of all time. So everybody remembers the hair gel scene.
Everyone remembers the hair gel scene.
It's the scene.
It's the scene.
And at the time, I mean, everybody, Cameron Diaz was like the hottest, like she was the newest, like she was it.
And yesterday on the Action Face-Off, I talked about how having Dumb and Dumber was so good for me because it was a superstar, a true comedic superstar, like in their prime.
Yeah.
And this is Stiller, like really starting that ball rolling.
Yeah, and remember too, you know, right around this time, so Diaz comes out in The Mask in '94. By the late '90s, she had already turned in My Best Friend's Wedding, which she anchors a lot of that movie.
She's amazing in My Best Friend's Wedding. She's as good or
better in a lot of ways than Julia Roberts. She was hitting home runs from a very, very early part in her career, and so she shows up in this movie and she's fantastic as Mary. I mean, she just all the things, like when she's with her girlfriends, she's talking about what she wants out of a guy, that the guy can, you know, hit home runs and, you know, eat what was it, like drink. What's she saying? Drink beer. And I'm not talking light beer. I'm talking real beer. You know, like, she crushes it. She crushes it. And like Stiller is so good. And then of course you have the stuff at the beginning with Frank and Beans.
Oh, Frank and Beans. How'd
you get the Frank above the Beans? Keith David is fucking unreal.
I love Dom Woganowski. I love Dylan. I love Tucker. Tucker is so. He's. I'm just a pizza. Her name's Marv, man. I love her, man.
He's amazing, Tucker. His accent, he crushes.
Oh yes, Mary.
Oh yes, Mary.
Architect. Yes.
And then we haven't even mentioned Matt Dillon, who's probably the funniest part of the whole movie. I mean, Pat Healy, when Stiller first walks into his office and he stands up and he's pulling his pants up. It's just
like. That performance from Dylan actually made me think he was just kind of disgusting in real life.
Yeah, I mean that's again you talk about actors. You talk about this with Commodus a lot in Gladiator.
Right,
it was the first time you had seen him, and you talk about the impact that seeing somebody for the first time has on you.
That's the first time I saw him.
I don't know if I'd ever seen Matt Dillon before this. You know, it was probably 9 when this movie's in theaters. I'm guessing, or this might be 99 or 98. It's right in there. It's like 98 probably. It's probably 98, and like so you know we were 10. Like I don't think I had seen Matt Dillon at this point, and he's just. He's such a sleaze, and he gets these super white teeth.
Yeah, the teeth.
Because he hears her talking to Tucker. Yeah. I mean...
like chickless.
There's so much about this movie. And then, of course, at the end, everybody's coming after Mary, and Brett Favre.
Brett Favre.
Yeah, I just think there were so many things. There were so many things in this movie. This movie had so many things going for it.
And it's still so funny.
Yeah,
and it's a great rom-com. It really is, but it's more of an R-rated comedy.
Yeah,
yeah.
When Dylan goes to see Mary and he comes back, yeah, I mean she's in the wheelchair.
Yeah, she got 3 kids.
I think I'd really like just to look her up. Anyway, she's a real. I thought she was a real spark plug, butt plug. I said she's a real butt plug. I mean, yeah, it's stupid.
It's stupid, but
it's another Farrelly Brothers comedy.
Yep.
And they in the 90s, they were just destroying it. They were like, and this movie is as funny as any. So we got 3 left in the top 10 here. I think it's time to shout out some of the honorable mentions. These top ones.
I still feel like we saved the 2 for when we went right before number 1.
These top 2, you're saying?
Yeah, and I think we do this one right now.
Okay, so we can tell you guys that our top 10 does not include Clueless. Doesn't include Groundhog Day.
And it doesn't include Mrs. Doubtfire, which I already said earlier.
Which you already said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Clueless is really funny. It feels, in retrospect, when I think about it, more like a coming-of-age kind of comedy. It doesn't feel as laugh-out-loud funny. And then, you know, Groundhog Day, that's a close one.
It's really, really close. It really is. I'm not sure. I mean, you can only have 10.
You can only have 10.
You can't put everything on the list.
Well, because we're going to read off a couple others here that are not on, and this is crazy. Wedding Singer doesn't make it.
Wedding Singer doesn't make it. Half Baked doesn't make it. Friday does not make it.
Yep.
South Park movie. Nope.
Yeah. My Best Friend's Wedding, as we already mentioned it, but you know, it's not going to make it. And then finally, Swingers. But some of those movies, I don't know that they would necessarily be on most people's lists. But there's a couple others that don't make it that you guys are going to find out in a second. So we're going to go with number 3 right now. This is the hardest one for me to say that this is number 3.
This is your favorite.
This is my brutal. This is my favorite comedy of the 90s, and this is Tommy Boy. So Tommy Boy, there's a few really interesting things about.
Big Tom Callahan.
I did see Tommy Boy in theaters. I saw this movie in 1995 when I was 7 years old, and Chris Farley became my favorite person in the whole world.
Yep.
I think for a lot of kids, for a lot of people, Farley was a singular talent. He was a kind of comedian and did a kind of physical comedy that was like, to that point, you know, you're talking the John Candys and Belushis of the world. That's like basically the guys
100%
that he's on the level with, and there's only a few. You go back further, but like that's who he was up against, and he was so young at this point in his career. He had only been on SNL for a couple years, and this was his first starring role. He had starring roles, remember, in Airheads, and he had it in Coneheads, and he had it in Wayne's World, and he had been in a lot of movies, but
this was like his movie.
Yeah, and he and Spade had been so good together on SNL.
God,
so
good.
There's so much about this movie that works. Rob Lowe's such a good villain.
Rob Lowe is maybe the greatest shit wheels of all time. Bo Derek is like the hottest stepmom ever, but then she's evil.
She's evil.
Big Tom Callahan,
Dennehy. This is the role.
This is his role.
This is his role.
We've talked about this numerous times. It's literally just First Blood and Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
I think Tommy Boy is his career-defining role.
So the reason I'm okay letting this slide to 3 is the relevance conversation. And one of the things that when I had this conversation with some other people that came up was, we're not that young anymore. So at 31, thinking that Tommy Boy is the funniest movie in the world, is somebody who's 16 finding this movie today? Do they even really know that it exists?
Who the hell is Chris Farley?
Spade's not really relevant. Farley's been dead for 20 years.
I showed someone Chris Farley for the first time recently, and it kind of broke my heart.
It's crazy because he starred in 4 movies, 2 of which are largely, by most people's standards, unwatchable. I disagree with one of those.
What is it?
I love Almost Heroes.
Yeah, Almost Heroes.
But he basically starred in Tommy Boy and Black Sheep, the 2 David Spade comedies, and those are the comedies. And Tommy Boy, because I was like, okay, what about like Fat Guy in a Little Coat? You're saying that didn't live on?
Fat Guy in a Little, well, kind of.
And they were like, sort of, but not really.
Yeah.
Like they were like, I think the most notable Farley things that have lived on are him doing the Chippendales dance with Swayze, and Matt Foley, motivational speaker. They feel like they're the 2 things that have kind of. And I would have always thought it was Tommy Boy, because Tommy Boy to me is the absolute funniest. I mean, there's so many good moments.
Oh God, I die, like, even just from the beginning. I can hear you getting fatter.
Yeah, I mean, their chemistry is amazing. Obviously, when Farley, when he's graduating, he finds out he's gonna graduate. He rips the bong. He's like, "Now some of us are leaving. That is sad. We're not done. No way.
No way.
We're gonna show this world a thing or two. We're gonna show," and then it falls through a table, which is the classic Farley move.
Did you eat a lot of paint chips as a kid? No. Why? Yeah. And then his freak out. His freak outs every time you would want to sell something.
Oh, I mean, talking about the brake pads. Now you're driving with the other guy's brake pad. Driving along. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
He just is. He's amazing. His comedy's unbelievable. Dan Aykroyd has a great cameo in this movie.
Yeah.
And then I think the thing that anchors this so well and makes Tommy Boy and Chris Farley so good is that he has his moments, his real acting moments, where he's being asked to play it for real and grieve his father and have those moments with David Spade and those moments really they land.
They're great.
He's so good. He was, and I think Farley did lose his father, obviously, or no,
father lost him. Yeah.
But I know he had such a close relationship to his dad.
Yeah.
So like losing Big Tom in the movie, there's just. This movie will forever and always probably be my favorite comedy of all time. I don't think there will ever be a movie that'll get ahead of it. But the ones that we do have ahead of it on this list, I can acknowledge, and I also love like almost equally for different reasons.
Yeah, I love Tommy Boy. Number 2 here. This is kind of my version of Tommy Boy.
Yeah,
I think our number 1 is it just separates. But my version of Tommy Boy. If it wasn't Billy Madison, it was Happy Gilmore.
Yeah.
My sister, Leslie, who I was closest with growing up, was just obsessed with Farley and Sandler and Spade. But Sandler was her number 1 because of Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore. And so watching this, I didn't really know Carl Weathers much, right? Like, I'd seen Rocky, but I hadn't really made the correlation. Yeah. It wasn't quite as hilarious to see him as Chubbs. And Christopher McDonald, now as an adult, he's probably the funniest part of the movie, even though as a kid, I kind of hated him. And I just loved Adam Sandler being goofy as hell.
This movie, like, the comedy in this movie lives on. It has a lot of really great beats. Sandler's movies, by and large, and they're all this way, aside from, like, when he's in, like, straight dramas. But when you go with, like, a Sandler comedy, like this Netflix deal, he feels like he throws about 60 jokes a movie. And it feels like in the good ones, 55 land. And in the bad ones, like 5 land.
Right.
But this is one of the ones where almost every single joke hits.
You know, as the first guy to ever take his skate off and try to stab a guy with it.
And and Julie Bowen is in there, obviously, as a young, and Christopher McDonald as Shooter McGavin. I mean, we had Alan Richardson sitting right here in this very seat. He's in a comedy that it's coming out called The Turkey Bowl, and he's like a dickbag kind of villain character. And I remember saying to him, like, you're the funniest part of the movie, but people love the shitbag villain in comedies. I was like, thanks, Shooter McGavin. He's the funniest, most memorable part of Happy Gilmore for a reason. Yeah. And he was like, oh, thanks for saying that, man. Like, because it's not like Sandler's that funny ever.
No, he just plays a part and he has his funny moments, but it's like, goddamn alligator, bit my hand off.
I mean, Weathers is still, for me, he's the
so
movie.
Good.
But, like, there are so many things in this movie that are great. I mean, he's incredible.
Oh, I'm sorry, because you're black?
No, goddamn alligator, bit my... Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. You're a sick man. You know that, Chubbs?
And obviously, you know, everything that Shooter McGavin does is amazing.
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly, but when he's angry, and he's still trying to be shooter, he's like, his crazed, angry shooting of the guns is one of my favorite moments in the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's just, and I mean, Shooter, like McDonald only got to be in a small handful of roles that were memorable. He, for the most part,
I mean,
he was a TV actor. He was a bit part guy. He's got a significant role in Thelma and Louise.
Honestly, when I think Christopher McDonald, I think of 3 movies.
Yeah,
Leave It to Beaver.
Okay.
This.
Yeah.
And Requiem. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Him and Requiem. I forgot about that. And then Dirty Work. He's in as well. He's the bad guy.
Right.
In Dirty Work. And but I do think that just like him as Shooter McGavin, you know what I could really go? Pepsi. Miss. Yes. Diet. Like, such a shithead.
Oh, and he's also, and also, my left arm is just a little shorter than my right, or whatever he says. Just like, what?
It's a great premise for a movie, obviously. You know, his grandma is such a sweetheart.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, Stiller.
Yeah,
Stiller is so good.
Stiller feels kind of like he almost steals the show in his scenes. It's a tremendous looking trophy, Mr. Gilmore.
Now your back's gonna hurt because you just pulled landscaping duty.
I can get you a big tall warm glass to shut the hell up.
You're in my world now.
Hey, you're gonna go to sleep. I will put you to sleep.
Oh, Mr. Gilmore, how are you? Hoity-day.
And him like on the phone, like negotiating. This is handmade quality shit here.
All right, so that only leaves one movie left, but just to let you know, it's not going to be The Big Lebowski, and it's not going to be Wayne's World. That's right. There it is. Blow up the comments. Blow us up on Twitter. Call us morons. Tell us we don't know what we're talking about. But Wayne's World and The Big Lebowski are not making our top 10 comedies in the 90s.
I wonder if we were on a live chat right now, how many people would immediately list our number one based on just like the laws of elimination.
And they just all put one of those 2 movies.
It does feel like actually from the beginning the number one is an obvious choice, just only because the sheer number of people that feel this way.
Almost every single, I'd say out of 10 people asked, 8 or 9 people say what we have as number one.
Yeah, which is, and that's why we had a whole conversation offline about like, I talked about this with my office that I go into. I talked about this with a few other people. And a couple of people were arguing against this movie, saying like, oh, no, like that's like, you know, it's just bathroom humor. And it's like, you can talk yourself into like really intelligent choices being the number one choice, but you can't talk the world into the thing they still think is funny. Like if you ask somebody what's funny, somebody who's seen 100 movies in their lifetime, and the thing that makes them laugh the most is this movie, then that's what this is.
That's just what it is.
It doesn't have to be smart.
And like, yeah, it doesn't have to be smart. It doesn't. But see, that's the thing about this movie is it's so much smarter than people give it credit for.
Yeah.
There's such intelligent, good writing here. It's incredible performances. And if you want to talk about bathroom humor, you've got to be able to sell bathroom humor. Yeah. And Jeff Daniels sells bathroom. I have never thought
the movie
a movie scene smelled that bad. I know.
Oh.
But I'm pretty sure people can figure out what it is.
Figure it out, yeah.
Yeah. It's Dumb and Dumber.
It's Dumb and Dumber. Another Farrelly Brothers comedy.
Yep.
So the Farrelly Brothers end up on this list 3 times.
In the 90s, they were just legends.
Almost everything they made was just the best. And I mean, Dumb and Dumber comes in the Jim Carrey run. He has The Mask, Ace Ventura, and Dumb and Dumber all the same year.
All in 94.
Which is, the world really gets introduced to Jim Carrey all at once. And you see it happen. Well, we've talked about this, like Kevin Hart or people like that. They'll have their moment.
Well, yeah, and then like I remember when I saw Jim Carrey on In Living Color before he'd blown up, I was like, because my sister showed it to me. I was like, she always wanted to show me Fire Marshal Bill.
Yeah.
And I was like, that guy is like too funny.
Yeah.
To be just here in the background as like a bit player. He was like a nobody on Mad TV, essentially.
Yeah, I remember.
You know? And then this, in 94, it was just like, here you go.
Yeah. And he has this moment, and it's also so interesting when you watch interviews with him now, or you watch that documentary about making Man on the Moon, and how like smart and introspective of a guy he is, and he's so like existential with the way that he thinks about the world. But his physical comedy is just like unmatched. He had a talent for physical comedy, still has a talent for it that's like really almost nothing
unrivaled.
else anyone's ever done.
Jim Carrey can overact worse than anyone out there and make it enjoyable. Like, think of anyone else in the entire world being Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
Right.
And how obscene he is with the hair and the body and like talking with his ass and like the way he parks and the way he talks. No one can do that.
You know what movie I've still never seen to this day?
What?
Me, Myself, and Irene.
Oh, who could do that movie? Like, someone playing a schizo of himself, you see two different people.
Yeah.
And it's just him. Like, and Jim Carrey's an amazing, truly amazing dramatic actor as well.
Great,
but
yeah.
like, comedy, I don't actually think there's anyone that's as talented as he is, ever.
Yeah, he had he was like your Charlie Chaplin level kind of physical understanding of comedy. Like he's just a master. Like you know, like a master. And so Dumb and Dumber, I mean, again, when you talk about lines that are quotable, you talk about Simi Swami, Simi Samsonite. I was way off.
Way off.
I mean, you just talk about all of it. There's
Freda Felcher?
Freda Felcher?
Yeah, I know her. Yeah, I mean, I remember you talking about her.
It's called the Shaggin' Wagon. And
kick his ass, Seabass.
Right. It's endless. And this movie, this is like one of those movies that makes me unabashedly proud to like simple bathroom humor.
Yes.
I mean, like when they accidentally give Verbal a heart attack, when they put like rat poison in his.
But even before that, when they're doing this stupid shit with the ketchup, and
ketchup
mustard,
and
you're like, that's not funny if anyone else does that.
It's somehow hilarious when they do it with ketchup and mustard.
It's so stupid.
And like
it's like going up his nose.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, these help. And they're just like eating shit. Here you go. Pills are good.
Yeah, I mean this. Like once again, you go through the list and you talk about like if you have an 8-year-old, you want to show a movie to make them laugh. Like the movies you choose on here, I mean the top 3 are all not R for a reason.
And honestly, you show an 8-year-old this, and a lot of the stuff that you don't want your 8-year-old knowing or listening to goes right over their head.
Yeah.
It really does. Because I remember watching this movie as I get older and older, and I'd find new things in it every time. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I mean, Harry, you're alive. You're a horrible shot.
You're a horrible shot. Harry, your hands are freezing. Oh, God. So that's our list. That's our top 10. Is there anything else you want to talk about from Dumb and Dumber, man?
No, I feel like when you get to a movie like Dumb and Dumber,
you can just quote the whole thing.
We asked Cody Hall before the show went live, engineer for the show, what's your favorite comedy in the 90s? It's Dumb and Dumber. You know,
Yep.
I believe we asked Wendy, you guys know from Collider here.
Mm-hmm.
She said right off the bat, it's Dumb and Dumber. I mean,
4 out of the 5 generals in the chat today said Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber. I mean, there's justification and then there's just reality, which is that it is the 90s comedy that has endured. And so I think when we talked about Tommy Boy, one thing that the people I was talking to said was like, you know, one of the people I was talking to had a 17-year-old younger brother. And he was like, well, I think those Sandler movies, for whatever reason, they kind of play on cable and on Netflix and places like that differently, you know, because Sandler's still making comedies because he's still pretty relevant. I don't think that, like, my brother would watch Tommy Boy. I don't think any of it exists. I don't think it really comes up.
But he would watch Happy Gilmore.
But he would watch Happy Gilmore because it's like the gold standard of why Sandler's famous.
So this is how you trick him. You talk to him, and he goes, oh, okay, yeah, that. So then he watches Happy Gilmore, and you go, oh, I got to show you this Netflix special. And then you show him Sandler singing about Farley, and then you show him Farley.
The Sandler singing about Farley.
The Sandler singing about Farley. It almost makes me cry every time I think about it.
Yeah, me too.
It's so good. If you guys haven't seen that, go and just Google Adam Sandler sings Chris Farley. And it's part of his Netflix special, the 100% Fresh. But it's... Lorne Michaels, I remember reading an interview, or I think it was in the Chris Farley documentary.
Yeah.
They were talking about how Lorne Michaels himself was saying that you would meet people, and this is Lorne Michaels, right? He's picked some of the greatest comic talent ever.
Yeah.
He's like, you would meet some people that are just infuriatingly talented.
Yeah.
And that was Chris Farley.
Right.
Every single person that ever interacted with him knew that he was the funniest person they'd ever met and would ever meet.
Yeah, I mean, you hear all those guys. A lot of those guys in that documentary, they say when people ask, who's the funniest guy you ever knew?
Hands down, without a doubt.
Hands down, Farley.
Yeah.
It's no question it was Farley. And, like, it's brutal, too, when you see the later stages of his career because, like, you see he starts to lose it a little because he's not as funny anymore. He's louder. He's yelling more.
He's more angry.
He's more angry. He's much bigger. His voice is kind of going. And it stops being as charming as it was. But, like, young Farley is...
Young, sweet Farley
is like unmatched hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like I again as a kid, like there was on days I'd be sick home from school. There's nothing I wanted more than to watch Tommy Boy. I'd watch it every single time.
I still think about Farley regularly and how much the world is missing out from him.
Yeah. So, anyway, guys, that's our top 10 comedies of the 90s. Leave your thoughts below. What do you think? What's your top 10? Where did we miss? Are we crazy?
How insulted are you that we did not put Wayne's or Big Lebowski or one of the other honorable mentions not on the list?
Yeah, and of course, follow along with everything we're doing. We already mentioned the Patreon show, patreon.com/Team Action. You can go join at any level if you want to submit. This week, we're going to be arguing top Scorsese movie of all time.
Yep.
It's going to be me versus 4 of you. If you want to be a part of it, go send an email to actionindustriesbrand@gmail.com. Subject line Scorsese Face-Off. Just pick 2 movies, your top 2 choices for Scorsese. And if we want you to compete on the show, we'll be letting you guys know on Saturday before we go live.
Yeah. Super, super fun. Loved competing yesterday. Cannot wait to compete again. Make sure you tweet at myself and Ben Media, Andrew Guy, Team Action Show. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Again, comment down below, subscribe, like. Thank you so much, Collider. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.